A lot of talk going on these days about who is the greatest ever, about who has the titles, the raw talent, the most clutch moments. I get it. It's a tough call. I mean, even the jersey numbers are the same. But maybe the best way to settle this debate is to play it out head to head. I'll watch that.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And by now, I'm pretty sure you're aware, LeBron James just won his 4th championship with his 3rd different team on the Los Angeles Lakers. And with the Lakers winning this championship, this is going to bring back the inevitable LeBron versus Jordan comparisons. And these comparisons, they really reached a peak after the 2016 finals, where LeBron James came back from a 3-1 deficit versus the 73-9 Golden State Warriors. And I can guarantee you after this Lakers championship, those debates are going to come to the forefront of every major debate show. And when you have two players like LeBron and Jordan, who played in two completely different eras, it can be difficult to compare. But in this video, I think I have some pretty good criteria that can give you guys a good objective comparison between LeBron James and Michael Jordan. Now, the 7 main criteria I came up with were individual accolades, longevity, peak, championships and winning, overall stats, skill and talent, and clutchness. And with those 7 categories, I think we can come to a conclusion about who is better, LeBron James or Michael Jordan. Now, the first category I want to look at is individual accolades. And I think this category, it is pretty straightforward, as Michael Jordan has more MVPs, more Finals MVPs, more All-Defensive teams, more scoring titles, more Defensive Player of the Years, and more steals titles. LeBron James, he has more All-NBA appearances, and he led the league in assists 1 time. And despite LeBron winning his 4th championship, Michael Jordan, he is still the more accomplished player, and I really don't think it's debatable for any rational basketball fan. Now, the next category we're going to take a look at is stats. And for this category, we're going to be looking at per game stats, as they show who was the better player on average, while total stats show who had more longevity, and longevity is a completely different category. Now, when looking at this very simple stat comparison, off the bat, you can tell that both these players, they are amazing stats-wise, and it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. And in this comparison, Jordan leads in points per game, steals, has less turnovers, and shoots better from the free throw line. LeBron James, he averages more assists, rebounds, shoots better from the field, and has a higher 3-point percentage, and both these players are tied at 0.8 blocks per game. Now, that stat comparison, it is as simple as it gets, but I do want to add a little bit of perspective to those numbers. And the first thing I want to talk about is that blocks per game number. Now, as you saw in that comparison, both players averaged 0.8 blocks per game for their career. But if you dig a little deeper into the numbers, you'll actually realize that Michael Jordan, he is the better overall shot blocker. So, when you look at which player had more 100 block seasons, Michael Jordan had 2 compared to LeBron James's 0. And Michael Jordan, he's actually the only shooting guard in NBA history to have multiple 100 block seasons. And when it comes to small forwards who have 100 block seasons, LeBron James, he isn't even top 20. And I know LeBron James, one of the signature moves he has is a chase down block, but the better shot blocker in general is Michael Jordan. And I also want to take a quick note to look at rebounding, as LeBron James, he averages just over 1 more rebound, but I do think it's very interesting to note that Michael Jordan, he actually averages more offensive rebounds than LeBron James, despite being 3 inches smaller and playing the shooting guard position. And when we look at Jordan's career, he had 10 seasons, grabbing 100 or more offensive rebounds compared to LeBron James's 4 seasons. Which again is very interesting considering LeBron James, he plays the 4 position and is nearly 3 inches taller. And one last thing I want to note about rebounding is that nearly 70% of LeBron's rebounds are uncontested. And these stats have been tracked since 2015, and as you see on your screen, LeBron James, he is always in the 70% range when it comes to uncontested rebounds. And when you look at someone like Russell Westbrook, who's considered a stat patter for grabbing tons of uncontested rebounds, it is actually very similar to LeBron James. And in that same time frame, from 2015 to 2020, Russell Westbrook, he averaged more rebounds, more offensive rebounds, and more defensive rebounds than LeBron James, despite playing the point guard position. And I think in today's NBA, rebounding is definitely inflated, and that mainly has to do with the lack of paint presence from dominant big men, and that was definitely not the case in Jordan's era, as he had to go up against some of the best big men of all time. Now, some more context I want to add to Jordan and LeBron's stats has to deal with their shooting. Now, for LeBron's career, he's taken 36% of his shots from 0 to 3 feet, compared to Jordan, who takes only 17.4% of his shots from that range. And that is nearly a 20% difference, and I think it's pretty amazing when you take into account Jordan. His field goal percentage is only 0.7% lower than LeBron James. And when you look at which player takes more of those shots from 3 to 10 feet, LeBron James also takes more of those shots with 12.2% to Jordan's 9.2%. And when it comes to the outside perimeter shots, 16 feet to the three-point line, as well as three-pointers, Michael Jordan, he takes more of those shots from the perimeter. And I think it's in pretty big context and pretty important when you compare these guys and their shooting percentages. So all those numbers I showed you, those would be classified as traditional stats. And as you guys know, there's also advanced stats. And we'll take a look at those for both Jordan and LeBron James. And the 4 major advanced stats we have are PER, win shares, blocks plus minus, and VORP. And once again, we're going to be looking at the per game averages of all these stat categories. Now for PER, Jordan leads LeBron with 27.9 to 27.5. Jordan, he has the highest PER of all time. LeBron James, he is second. When it comes to win shares, Jordan, he also is the highest of all time. When it comes to the average box plus minus, Jordan, once again, he is the highest of all time. And when it comes to the average VORP, also known as value over replacement player, Jordan is also first all time. And Jordan, he also leads LeBron in all 4 of these advanced stat categories. And that really does not change if you look at their advanced stats in the playoffs, as Jordan, once again, he leads LeBron in PER, win shares, box plus minus, and VORP. Now, out of all those 4 advanced stat categories for both the regular season and the playoffs, Michael Jordan, he leads LeBron in every single stat category. And I think it's also important to note that Michael Jordan, he is number 1 all time in all 8 of those categories. And what makes it even more impressive is that in Jordan's playing days, he didn't have access to these advanced stats and he had no idea what they were. And over the past 5 years, NBA teams have become very stat conscious when it comes to the advanced analytics. And players in NBA history, they have always been stat conscious, while the advanced stats, it's on a whole nother level when it comes to efficiency, impact, and value. So for these stat comparisons, I would say that Michael Jordan, he has the edge on LeBron James when it comes to both traditional stats and advanced stats. Now, moving on to the next category, we have winning and championships. And when it comes to championships, I always feel like there has to be a disclaimer. They don't mean everything when evaluating a player. As you can see in this list, I have multiple criteria, and championships, they are definitely one of them. Now, on the flip side of that, you also have a very specific fan base that wants winning and championships to not matter at all when debating players. And I'm just here to tell you, winning and championships, they 100% matter when debating players. And if you've played sports at any level, you know that winning and winning a championship, that is the ultimate goal for a player as well as a team. And basketball, it's a very unique sport where one player can have a huge impact on the outcome of a game on both ends of the court. Now, when it comes to a sport like football, a guy like Tom Brady, he can't play both sides of the ball, and that can limit his impact on the outcome of a game. But in basketball, LeBron and Jordan, they can both play offense as well as defense. And superstars in basketball, they have a huge impact on the outcome of every single game. So with that little disclaimer, let's go into championships and winning. I think this category is fairly straightforward, as Michael Jordan is a 6-time NBA champion, a 6-time Finals MVP. He had 2 three-peats, and he has a 6-0 record in the NBA Finals. Now, LeBron's resume, I would say, is extremely impressive, and anyone who says LeBron James is not a winner, they are flat out delusional. LeBron, he's a 4-time NBA champion, and that doesn't happen by accident. I know his Finals record, it is 4-6, but you have to understand, 4 championships and 10 Finals appearances, that is 100% being a winner, and I honestly don't really care what his Finals record is. Now, one of the big reasons LeBron's Finals record is so bad is because he played teams like the Golden State Warriors. And I will acknowledge that Michael Jordan, he never faced a team like that in the NBA Finals. But with that being said, Jordan, he still faced some all-time great competition in the NBA Finals. The Utah Jazz, who won 64 and 62 games. The Seattle Supersonics, who won 64 games. The Phoenix Suns, who won 62 games. The Portland Trail Blazers, who won 57 games. And even the Lakers minus Kareem, who won 58 games. And if you look at the average wins of each team facing the finals, Jordan actually has the edge on LeBron James with 61.2 to LeBron's 59.8. And in my mind, what makes Jordan's 6 championships more impressive than LeBron's 4 is not only that Jordan has more, is that Jordan hit a much tougher path to winning championships. And LeBron James, for the majority of his career, he played in the weaker Eastern Conference, and it is debatably the weakest conference in NBA history. Now again, that's not taking anything away from LeBron's accomplishments, as he did make 8 straight NBA Finals, which is an amazing accomplishment. I just think it's very important to point out LeBron James, he played in a weak conference, the same way it's important to point out how difficult LeBron's finals competition was. And one last thing I want to add is their record versus 50 and 60 win teams. Jordan's record versus 50 win teams in the playoffs is 20 and 7, compared to LeBron, who's 19 and 11. And both these players' records versus 60 win teams, Jordan, he is 7 and 2, and LeBron James is 3 and 4. So, much like the individual accolades category, I think this is pretty straightforward, and there's a clear winner in this category, being Michael Jordan. Now, moving on to the next category, we have longevity. And LeBron James, I want to say off the bat, he has the best longevity for a superstar in NBA history. He has played 17 years in the NBA and over 1,000 games, and logged over 60,000 minutes. And in this time, he has scored over 34,000 points, over 9,000 rebounds, and 9,000 assists, with 2,000 steals and 957 blocks. Now, if you compare this to Jordan, who only played 15 years in the NBA and only 1,072 games, he trails LeBron in points, rebounds, assists, as well as blocks. He only leads in the steals category. Now, in that comparison, there's obviously a clear winner, but one thing I want to do is look at both these players at the 1,072 game mark, and that number is very important because that is the number of games Michael Jordan played his entire career. And when you compare that to LeBron James at the 1,072 game mark, I would say it's a more interesting comparison, as Jordan leads in points, steals, blocks, and has less turnovers. LeBron, he leads in rebounds and assists. Now, with that being said, LeBron, he still wins the longevity category, and I said before, I think he has the best longevity in NBA history. And our next category is going to be the opposite of longevity, and we're going to look at both these players' absolute peaks. And in my opinion, a player's peak, that is when they are the best version of themselves, and they are at their best on both ends of the court. And for LeBron, his 3-year peak was from 2012 to 2014, compared to Jordan, whose peak was from 91 to 93. Now, in this comparison of who had the better 3-year peak, once again, I think it's pretty straightforward with the stats, as Jordan leads LeBron in points, steals, blocks, less turnovers, and shoots better from the free throw line. And LeBron James averages more assists, rebounds, shoots better from the field, and better from 3. But what really gives the edge to Jordan in this comparison is that he accomplished more than LeBron James, winning more championships, more finals MVPs, and making first team all defense 3 times compared to LeBron James's 2. Now, the next comparison I want to make is their 5-year peaks. And for LeBron, I would say it's from 2012 to 2016, and Jordan is from 89 to 93. In this comparison, it is eerily similar, as both these players have very similar stats and their accomplishments are nearly identical. Now, Jordan, he has the edge in more categories, but LeBron James, he is not far behind. And the last peak comparison I'll make is both these players' 10-year peaks. Now, for LeBron, his peak or absolute prime was from 2008 till 2018, and Jordan was 88 till 98. And this comparison tends to favor Jordan, as he accomplished way more than LeBron at their 10-year peaks. And when looking at this comparison at the peak Michael Jordan, I would say he had no flaws in his game, as he was a good 3-point shooter, a good free throw shooter, a great scorer, a good passer, and an all-time great defender. Now, for LeBron James, the one glaring weakness he has that he always had is his free throw shooting, as in his 10-year peak, he barely shot 74% from the free throw line. And for a high-volume superstar player, I would say that's definitely below average. And when deciding which player had the better peak, I think Michael Jordan, he narrowly edged out LeBron James. Now, so far in this video, I've been throwing out a lot of stats, a lot of numbers, and a lot of data. And as great as stats are, they don't always tell the whole story. And when it comes to basketball, there are 2 different groups of people. There are people who only look at numbers, analytics, and they basically look at basketball as a stat sheet. Now, on the opposite end of that, you have guys who don't want anything to do with stats, they don't value stats, and all they do is watch the games and form their opinion based on their eyes. And I don't think either of those groups are wrong, but for me personally, I like to value both stats as well as watching the game and watching the film. Now, for the eye test, this is subjective and this is purely based on opinion. And this is the only part of the video where it's 100% my sole opinion from watching the games. So after watching film on both these players, when it comes to scoring the basketball, I would say Michael Jordan, he has the edge over LeBron James. As Jordan, he is an elite mid-range shooter, one of the best in NBA history. He's a good free throw shooter, he operates well out of the post, and when he wants to, he can also shoot the 3. And his offensive arsenal, combined with his footwork and his fundamentals, I would say it's head and shoulders above LeBron James. Now, when I watch LeBron James, I would say he has the higher basketball IQ and the higher offensive IQ compared to Michael Jordan. He's also the better rebounder, and he is more versatile on the defensive end. Now, when talking about versatility, being more versatile, that does not make you the better defender, as in my mind, Michael Jordan, he's the better defender overall, better on ball, better off ball, he's the higher defensive IQ. Now, if you watch both these players, visually, they are both spectacular, but based solely off the eye test, Michael Jordan, his game was just more smooth, more fluid, and he had the fundamentals mastered basically from day one coming out of UNC. And for LeBron, I still think there's a few holes in his game that he hasn't straightened up. He's never been able to develop a great post-up game, and his footwork, I would say, is average at best for a superstar player, and it's not until recently that he's finally developed some signature offensive moves compared to Jordan, who had maybe the biggest offensive arsenal in NBA history for anyone not named Kobe Bryant. So for the eye test category, I give Michael Jordan the edge over LeBron James. Now the last category we have is which player is the most clutch and who do you trust with the game on the line. Now luckily for you guys, I have access to both these players' late game shooting numbers when it comes to the playoffs. In the playoffs with 24 seconds or less remaining, LeBron James, he is 10 for 28 on shooting at 35.7% compared to Jordan, who is 9 for 18 at 50%. In the last 10 seconds of a game, LeBron James, he is 9 for 23 at 39.1% compared to Jordan, who is 7 for 15 at 46.7%. And in the last 5 seconds, LeBron James, he is 7 for 18 at 38.9% compared to Jordan, who is 5 for 11 at 45.5%. And I do think it's important to note which player had the most big-time clutch moments on the big stage, and the most well-known play of LeBron's career is no doubt the block in Game 7, but I also think a big-time clutch play he had was in Game 7 versus the Spurs in 2013, as he had the dagger over Kawhi Leonard. Now, both those two plays are amazing in their own right, but when you compare LeBron to arguably the most clutch player in NBA history in Michael Jordan, it is simply not fair, as Jordan's clutch time moments in the finals, they are simply greater and just flat out better. And when it comes to clutch time scoring in the finals, Michael Jordan for his career, he had 126 clutch time points in the finals while shooting 46.9% from the field. And if you look at both Jordan and LeBron's top 5 clutch time point series, Michael Jordan, he has the edge in every single series. His highest finals being in 1983, where he had 38 points, more than double LeBron's best final series. And on the flip side of that, if you look at both their 3 worst series, Michael Jordan still has the edge on LeBron James, as LeBron's 2011 finals, he had 0 points in the clutch time situations. And that 2011 finals, that will haunt LeBron James for the rest of his career, as that was an absolute meltdown. And Jordan, he never had that big of a meltdown on the biggest stage on the NBA Finals. And frankly, nobody in NBA history has had as big a meltdown as LeBron James had in the 2011 Finals. Now, the last stat I want to look at to gauge how clutch a player is on the biggest stage is who had the most fourth quarter points in a playoff run. And the answer to that is, once again, Michael Jordan. So I think it's pretty obvious that Michael Jordan, he is more clutch than LeBron James. And since 2011, LeBron James, he's been fairly good in the clutch, and he's been one of the best late game shooters in the entire NBA playoffs. And I think that is something that goes overlooked, mainly due to the 2011 Finals. I do give him props to improving, but when you compare him to Jordan, there is simply no competition, as Michael Jordan, he is definitely the more clutch player. And out of our 7 categories, that was the last category. So let's look at the final scorecard. When it comes to individual accolades, Michael Jordan, he has the edge on LeBron James. When it comes to winning championships, Michael Jordan, he has the edge on LeBron James. When it comes to stats, Michael Jordan, he has the edge on LeBron James. When it comes to longevity, LeBron James has the edge on Michael Jordan. When it comes to who has the better peak, Michael Jordan, he has the edge on LeBron James. When it comes to the eye test, Jordan is better than LeBron. And when it comes to being more clutch, Michael Jordan, again, is better than LeBron James. So out of these 7 categories, Michael Jordan, he objectively wins 6 out of these 7. And that should not be surprising to any fan who understands how to evaluate players and their overall resumes. And after this video, I think it is still very clear that LeBron James, he is still chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan. And the big question is, will he ever catch Jordan, and will he ever reach that 6 championship mark? And the answer to that question, it can only be determined in time. But right now, Michael Jordan, he is still the greatest player of all time, and definitely better than LeBron James. So, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it was very informative, and I hope this video reiterated the point that Michael Jordan, he is better than LeBron James, and I hope you use this video in any debates when it comes to Jordan and LeBron James. So, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.